Listen, Stavrogin, to level the mountains is a good idea, not a ridiculous one. I'm for Shigalov. No need for education, enough of science. There's sufficient material even without science for 1,000 years to come. But obedience must be set up. Only one thing is lacking in the world: obedience. The thirst for education is already an aristocratic thirst. As soon as there's just a tiny bit of family or love, there's desire for property. We'll extinguish desire. We'll get drinking, gossip, denunciation going. We'll get unheard of depravity going. We'll stifle every genius in infancy, everything reduced to a common denominator. Complete equality. We've learned to trade and we're honest people. We don't need anything else. That was the recent response of the English workers. Only the necessary is necessary. Henceforth, that is the motto of the whole globe. But there's also a need for convulsion. This will be taken care of by us, the rulers. Slaves must have rulers. Complete obedience, complete impersonality. But once every 30 years, Shigalov gets a convulsion going and they all suddenly start devouring each other up to a certain point, simply so as not to be bored. Boredom is an aristocratic sensation. In Shigalovism, there will be no desires. Desire and suffering are for us, and for the slaves, Shigaliovism. You exclude yourself, again escaped from Stavrogin. And you. You know, I thought of handing the whole world over to the Pope, let him come out on foot, unshod, and show himself to the mob as if to say, look what I've been driven to. And everyone will swarm after him, even the army. The Pope on top, us around him, and under us, Shigaliovism. It's only necessary that the Internationale agree to the Pope, but it will. And the old codger will instantly agree. Besides, he has no other choice, so remember my words. Stupid? Tell me, is it stupid or not? Enough, Stavrogin muttered in vexation. Enough. Listen, I'm dropping the Pope. To hell with Shigaliovism. To hell with the Pope. We need actuality, not Shigaliovism, because Shigaliovism is a piece of jewelry. It's an ideal. It's for the future. Shigaliov is a jeweler and as stupid as every philanthropist. We need dirty work, and Shigaliov despises dirty work. Listen, the Pope will be in the West, and we will have you. Leave me alone, drunk man, Stavrogin muttered and quickened his pace. Stavrogin, you are beautiful. Peter Stepanovich cried out, almost in ecstasy. Do you know that you are beautiful? The most precious thing in you is that sometimes you don't know it. Oh, I've studied you. I've often looked at you from the side, from a corner. There's even simple-heartedness and naivete in you. Do you know that? There still is. You must be suffering, and suffering in earnest from this simple-heartedness. I love beauty. I am a nihilist, but I love beauty. Do nihilists not love beauty? They just don't love idols. But I love an idol. You are my idol. You insult no one, yet everyone hates you. You have the air of being everyone's equal, yet everyone is afraid of you. This is good. No one will come up and slap you on the shoulder. You're a terrible aristocrat. An aristocrat, when he goes among Democrats, is captivating. It's nothing for you to sacrifice life, your own or someone else's. You are precisely what's needed. I need precisely such a man as you. I know no one but you. You are a leader. You are a son. And I am your worm. He suddenly kissed his hand. A chill ran down Stavrogin's spine, and he jerked his hand away in fright. They stopped. Madman, whispered Stavrogin. Maybe I'm raving, the other went on in a patter. But I've thought up the first step. Shigaliov could never think up the first step. The Shigaliovs are many. But one man, only one man in Russia has invented the first step and knows how to do it. That man is me. Why are you staring at me? It's you I need, you. Without you, I'm a zero. Without you, I'm a fly. An idea in a bottle. Columbus without America. Stavrogin stood looking fixedly into his insane eyes. Listen, first, we'll get trouble going. Verkovensky was hurrying terribly and kept seizing Stavrogin by the left sleeve every moment. I've already told you, we'll penetrate among the people themselves. Do you know that we're already terribly strong now? Ours aren't only the ones who knife and burn, or perform classic pistol shots, or bite people. That kind only gets in the way. I can conceive of nothing without discipline. I'm a crook, really, not a socialist. Listen, I've counted them all up. The teacher who laughs with children at their God and at their cradle is already ours. The lawyer who defends an educated murderer by saying that he's more developed than his victims and couldn't help killing to get money is already ours. Schoolboys who kill a peasant just to see how it feels are ours. Jurors who acquit criminals right and left are ours. The prosecutor who trembles in court for fear of being insufficiently liberal is ours. Ours. Administrators, writers, a lot of them. An awful lot of them are ours. And they don't know it themselves. On the other hand, the docility of schoolboys and little fools has reached the highest point. Their mentors all have burst gallbladders. Everywhere there is vanity in immeasurable measure. Appetites beastly, unheard of. Do you know how much we can achieve with little ready-made ideas alone? When I left, Latrey's thesis that crime is insanity was raging. I come back. Crime is no longer insanity, but precisely common sense itself, almost a duty, at any rate a noble protest. But how can a developed murderer not murder if he needs money? And this is just the fruit. The Russian God has already folded in the face of rot gut. The people are drunk. Mothers are drunk. Children are drunk. The churches are empty. And in the courts, it's 200 strokes or fetch us a pot. Oh, just let this generation grow up. Only it's a pity there's no time to wait. Otherwise, they could get themselves even drunker. Oh, what a pity there are no proletarians. But there will be. There will be. We're getting there. It's also a pity we've grown more stupid, Stavrogin muttered and moved on his way. Listen, I myself saw a 6-year-old child leading his drunken mother home, and she was swearing at him in foul language. You think I'm glad of that? When it's in our hands, we may even cure it. If need be, we'll drive them into the desert for 40 years. But 1 or 2 generations of depravity are necessary now. An unheard of, mean little depravity that turns men into vile, cowardly, cruel, self-loving slime. That's what's needed. And with a bit of fresh blood to boot, for the sake of habit. Why are you laughing? I'm not contradicting myself. I'm only contradicting the philanthropists and Shigalovism. Not myself. I'm a crook, not a socialist. It's just a pity there's so little time. I promised Karmazinov I'd start in May and be done by the protection. Too soon? Do you know what I'm going to tell you, Stavrogin? So far, there's been no cynicism in the Russian people, though they swear in foul language. Do you know that the enslaved serf had more self-respect than Karmazinov? He got flogged, but he upheld his gods, and Karmazinov did not. Well, Verkhovinsky, I'm listening to you for the first time and listening in amazement, said Nikolai Vsevolodovich. So you're really not a socialist, but some sort of political climber? A crook. A crook. You're concerned about who I am? I'll tell you presently who I am. That's what I'm driving at. It was not for nothing that I just kissed your hand. But we need the people also to believe that we know what we want and that the others are merely brandishing their cudgel and striking their own. Eh? If only there was time. That's the one trouble. No time. We'll proclaim destruction. Why? Why again this little idea is so captivating? But we've got to limber up. We'll get fires going. We'll get legends going. Here, every mangy crew will be of use. I'll find such zealots for you in these same crews as would be ready for any kind of shooting and would be even grateful for the honor. Well, sir, so the trouble will start. Such a heaving will set in as the world has never seen. Russia will be darkened with mist. The earth will weep for the old gods. Well, sir, and then we'll bring out... Whom? Whom? Ivan the Tsarevich. Whom? Ivan Nazarevich, you! Stavrogin thought for a minute or so. An imposter? He suddenly asked in profound surprise, looking at the frenzied man. So this at last is your plan. We'll say he's in hiding, Verkovensky said softly in a sort of amorous whisper, as if he were indeed drunk. Do you know what this little phrase, he is in hiding, means? But he will appear. He will appear. We'll get a legend going better than the castrates. He exists, but no one has seen him. Oh, what a legend we can get going. And mainly, a new force is on the way. And this is what's needed. This is what the people are weeping for. What is there in socialism? It destroyed the old forces, but didn't bring any new ones. And here we have a force, and such a force, unheard of. We need it just this once as a lever to raise up the earth. Everything will rise. So you've seriously been counting on me? Stavrogin grinned maliciously. Why do you laugh? And so maliciously. Don't scare me. I'm like a child now. I can be scared to death by just one such smile. Listen, I won't show you to anybody, not to anybody. It must be that way. He exists, but no one has seen him. He's in hiding. And you know, it's even possible to show you, for example, to some one person out of 100,000, and it will start spreading all over the earth. We've seen him. We've seen him. Even with Ivan Filipovich, god of Sabaoth, they saw how he ascended to heaven in a chariot in front of the people, saw it with their own eyes. And you're no Ivan Filipovich. You're beautiful, proud as a god, seeking nothing for yourself, with the halo of a victim, in hiding. The main thing is the legend. You'll win them over. You'll look and win them over. He's bringing the new truth and is in hiding. And here we'll get 2 or 3 judgments of Solomon going. These crews, these fivesomes. No need for the newspapers. If just one petition in 10,000 is granted, everyone will come with petitions. In every village, every peasant will have heard tell that there exists somewhere this hollow in a tree where petitions are to be put. And the earth will groan a great groan. A new just law is coming. And the sea will boil up and the whole show house will collapse. And then we'll see how to build up an edifice of stone. For the first time, we will do the building. We alone. Frenzy, said Stavrogin. Why? Why don't you want it? Afraid? Well, that's why I seized upon you, because you're afraid of nothing. Is it unreasonable or what? But so far I'm a Columbus without an America. Is a Columbus without an America reasonable? Stavrogin was silent. Meanwhile, they had come right up to the house and stopped at the entrance. Listen. Verkovensky bent towards his ear. I'll do it for you without money. I'll end it tomorrow with Maria Timofeyevna without money. And by tomorrow, I'll bring you Liza. Want Liza tomorrow? Has he really gone crazy? Stavrogin thought, smiling. The front doors opened. Stavrogin, is America ours? Verkovensky seized his hand one last time. What for? Nikolai Vsevolodovich said seriously and sternly. No desire, I just knew it. The other cried out in a burst of frenzied spite. You're lying, you rotten, lascivious, pretentious little squire. I don't believe you. You've got a wolf's appetite. Understand, you've run up too big an account now. I really can't renounce you. There's no one else in the world like you. I've been inventing you since abroad, inventing you as I looked at you. If I hadn't been looking at you from a corner, nothing would have come into my head. Stavrogin went up the steps without answering. Stavrogin! Verkovensky shouted after him. I'll give you a day, or say 2 days. 3 days. More than 3 I can't do. And then, your answer. Stepan Trofimovich perquisitioned. Meanwhile, we had an adventure which surprised me and shocked Stepan Trofimovich. In the morning, at 8 o'clock, Nastasia came running to me from him with the news that her master had been perquisitioned. At first, I could understand nothing. All I got was that he had been perquisitioned by officials who had come and taken papers, and a soldier had tied them into a bundle and carted them away in a wheelbarrow. It was wild news. I hastened at once to Stepan Trofimovich. I found him in a surprising state, upset and greatly agitated, but at the same time with an unquestionably triumphant air. On the table in the middle of the room, the samovar was boiling, and there stood a full but untouched and forgotten glass of tea. Stepan Trofimovich was dawdling around the table and going into all the corners of the room, not conscious of his movements. He was wearing his usual red dressing jacket, but seeing me, hastened to put on his waistcoat and frock coat, something he had never done before when any close friend found him in his dressing jacket. He seized me at once and ardently by the hand. Enfant, un ami, he drew a deep breath. Cher, I sent only to you, and no one knows anything. Nastasia must be ordered to lock the door and let no one in, except them, of course. Vous comprenez? He looked at me worriedly, as if waiting for a reply. Of course, I fell to questioning him and learned somehow from his incoherent speech, full of interruptions and unnecessary additions, that at 7 o'clock in the morning, a governor's official had suddenly come to him. Excuse me, I've forgotten his name. He's not from around here, something stupid and German in his physiognomy. His name is Rosenthal. Not Blum? Blum! Precisely the name he gave. You know him, something dull and very self-satisfied in his face, but at the same time very severe, stiff, and serious. I was still asleep, and imagine he asked to have a glance at my books and manuscripts. He didn't arrest me, only books, and when he began explaining his visit to me, he looked as though Anyhow, he seemed to believe I was going to fall on him at once and start beating him to a pulp. All these low-class people are like that when they're dealing with a decent man. Needless to say, I understood everything at once. I was dignified and calm. I unlocked all the drawers for him and gave him all the keys. I personally handed them over. I handed everything over. Of the books, he took foreign editions of Herzen, a bound volume of The Bell, 4 copies of my poem, Et Enfant tout ça. Then papers and letters, and some of my historical, critical, and political sketches. All this they carried off. Nastasia says a soldier carted it away in a wheelbarrow, and they covered it with an apron. Yes, that's right. With an apron. It was all raving. Who could understand any of it? Once again, I showered him with questions. Had Blum come alone or not? On whose behalf? By what right? How dared he? Did he explain? He was alone, quite alone. Though there was someone else in the entryway. Yes, I remember that. And then, though there did seem to be someone else and a guard was standing in the entryway, we must ask Nastasia. She knows it better. I was overexcited. You see, he talked a pile of things. I was overexcited, but dignified, I assure you of it. You know, he uttered the name of Telyetnikov. I'm afraid, though, that I seem to have wept. The wheelbarrow they got from a shopkeeper next door. Oh, God, how could all this have happened? But for God's sake, speak more precisely. Stepan Trofimovich, this is a dream, what you're telling me. Cher, I'm as if in a dream myself. Savez-vous? And I think it was he who was hiding in the entryway. Yes, I recall he suggested the prosecutor, and it seems Dmitri Mitrich. But I outwitted them. And what do I care about Dmitri Mitrich? I think I even started begging him very much to conceal begging him very much, very much. I'm even afraid I humiliated myself. Comment croyez-vous, enfant, il a consenti? Yes, I recall it was he himself who asked that it would be better if it were concealed because he only came to have a glance. Et rien de plus, and nothing more, nothing. And that if they found nothing, then there'd be nothing. So that we ended it all en ami. Je suis tout à fait content. But for pity's sake, he was offering you guarantees and the order proper in such cases, and you yourself refused? I cried in friendly indignation. No, it's better this way, without any guarantees. And who needs a scandal? Let it be on a me for the time being. You know, in this town, if they find out, my enemies. And then what good is this prosecutor? Our pig of a prosecutor who's been impolite to me twice and who got such a fine thrashing the other year at the charming and beautiful Natalia Pavlovna's when he hid in her boudoir. And then my friend, don't contradict me or discourage, I beg you, because nothing is more unbearable when a man is unhappy than for 100 friends to come right then and point out to him how stupid he's been. Sit down anyway and have some tea. I confess I'm very tired. Oughtn't I to lie down and put some vinegar to my head? What do you think? Absolutely, I cried out. And maybe even ice. You're very upset. You're pale. Your hands are trembling. Lie down, rest. And wait to tell me. I'll sit here and wait. He could not get himself to lie down, but I insisted. Nastasia brought vinegar in a bowl. I wetted a towel and put it to his head. Then Nastasia climbed on a chair and set about lighting an icon lamp in front of the icon in the corner. I noticed it with surprise. Besides, there had never even been any icon lamp, and now one had suddenly appeared. It was I who ordered it today, just after they left. Stepan Trefimovich muttered, glancing slyly at me. When one has such things in one's room and they come to arrest you, it makes an impression, and they really must report what they've seen. Having finished with the icon lamp, Nastasia planted herself in the doorway, put her right hand to her cheek, and began looking at him with a lamentable air. Send her away, under some pretext. He beckoned to me from the sofa. I can't stand this Russian pity. And besides, it annoys me. But she left on her own. I noticed that he kept glancing back at the door and listening towards the entryway. One must be ready, you see, every moment. They'll come, take, and pfft, a man disappears. Lord, who will come? Who will take you? Voyez-vous, mon cher? I asked him directly as he was leaving. What will they do to me now? You might as well have asked where they'll exile you to, I cried out in the same indignation. That's what I implied when I asked the question, but he left without answering. Voyez-vous? As regards underwear, clothing, warm clothing especially, that's up to them. If they tell me to take it, well and good, or else they may send me in a soldier's greatcoat. But 35 rubles... Here he suddenly lowered his voice, glancing back at the door through which Nastasia had left. I've quietly slipped through a tear in my waistcoat pocket. Here, feel it. I think they won't take my waistcoat off. And I left 7 rubles in my purse to pretend this is all I have. You know, there's some change and a few coppers on the table, so they won't guess where I've hidden the money, and they'll think this is all. For God knows where I shall have to spend this night. I hung my head at such madness. Obviously, it was not possible to make an arrest or a search in the way he was saying, and he was most certainly confused. True, it all happened in those days before the present latest laws. True, too, he had been offered, according to his own words, a more regular procedure, but had outwitted them and refused. Of course, before, that is, still quite recently, a governor could, in extreme cases, but again, what sort of extreme case could this be? That was what baffled me. Most likely there was a telegram from Petersburg, Stepan Trofimovich suddenly said. A telegram? About you? You mean on account of Herzen's writings in your poem? You're out of your mind. What's there to arrest you for? I simply got angry. He made a face and was apparently offended. Not at my yelling at him, but at the thought that there was nothing to arrest him for. Who can tell these days what he might be arrested for? He muttered mysteriously. A wild and most absurd idea flashed through my mind. Stepan Trofimovich, tell me as a friend, I cried out, as a true friend. I won't betray you. Do you belong to some secret society, or do you not? And now, to my surprise, even here he was not certain whether he was or was not a participant in some secret society. But that depends, voyez-vous. How does it depend? When one belongs wholeheartedly to progress, and who can vouch for it? You think you don't belong, and then lo and behold, it turns out you do belong to something. How can that be? It's either yes or no. This dates from Petersburg, when she and I wanted to found a magazine there. That's the root of it. We slipped away then, and they forgot us, but now they've remembered. Cher. But don't you know, he exclaimed painfully, in our country they can take you, put you in a kibitka, and march you off to Siberia for good, or else forget you in some dungeon. And he suddenly burst into hot tears. Tears simply poured out of him. He covered his eyes with his red foulard and sobbed for a good 5 minutes, convulsively. I cringed all over. This was the man who for 20 years had been prophesying to us, our preacher, mentor, patriarch, Kukolnik, holding himself so loftily and majestically over us all, before whom we bowed so wholeheartedly, considering it an honor, and now suddenly he was sobbing like a naughty little boy waiting for a birching from the teacher who has just gone to fetch the rod. I felt terribly sorry for him. He obviously believed as much in the kibitka as in the fact that I was sitting beside him, and expected it precisely that morning, that very minute, and all because of Herzen's writings and some sort of poem of his own. Such total ignorance of everyday reality was both moving and somehow disgusting. He finally stopped weeping, got up from the sofa, and began pacing the room again, continuing our conversation but glancing out the window every moment and listening towards the entryway. Our conversation continued disjointedly. All my assurances and reassurances were like sand against the wind. He scarcely listened, and yet he needed terribly for me to reassure him, and talked non-stop to that end. I saw that he could no longer do without me, and would not let me go for anything in the world. I stayed, and we sat for something over 2 hours. In the course of the conversation, he recalled that Blum had taken with him 2 tracts he had found. What tracts? I was fool enough to get scared. Did you really? 10 copies were passed off on me, he replied vexedly. He spoke with me now vexedly and haughtily, now terribly plaintively and humbly. But I had already taken care of 8, so Blum got hold of only 2. And he suddenly flushed with indignation. You're putting me in with those people? Do you really suppose I could be in with those scoundrels, with tract mongers, with my boy Peter Stepanovich? With those free thinkers of cowardice? Oh, God. Huh. Haven't they somehow mixed you up with... Nonsense, though. It can't be, I observed. You know, suddenly escaped him, I feel at moments que je ferai là-bas quelque esclandre, that I'll make some sort of scandal there. Oh, don't go away. Don't leave me alone. My career is finished as of today. I feel it. I will perhaps rush at someone there and bite him, like that sub-lieutenant. He gave me a strange look, frightened and at the same time as if wishing to frighten. Such a great description. I'm going to read it again just because it's so good. He gave me a strange look, frightened and at the same time as if wishing to frighten. He was indeed growing more and more vexed at someone and at something as time went by and the kibitkas failed to come. He was even angry. Suddenly, Nastasia, who had gone from the kitchen to the entryway for something, brushed against the coat rack there and knocked it over. Stepan Trofimovich trembled and went dead on the spot. But when the matter was clarified, he all but shrieked at Nastasia and, stamping his feet, chased her back into the kitchen. A minute later, he said, looking at me in despair, I'm lost, cher. He suddenly sat down by me and gazed pitifully, so pitifully into my eyes. Cher, it's not Siberia I'm afraid of, I swear to you. Oh, I swear to you. Tears even came to his eyes. I'm afraid of something else. I could tell from his look alone that he wished finally to tell me something extraordinary, meaning something he had refrained from telling me so far. I'm afraid of disgrace. He whispered mysteriously. What disgrace? But quite the contrary. Believe me, Stepan Trofimovich, it will all be explained this very day and will end in your favor. You're so certain I'll be pardoned? But what is this pardoned? Such words. What is it you've done? I assure you haven't done anything. What do you know about it? All my life has been, cher, they'll recall everything, and even if they find nothing, so much the worse, he suddenly added unexpectedly. How so much the worse? Worse. I don't understand. My friend, so let it be Siberia, Arkhangelsk, stripping of rights. If I'm lost, I'm lost, but I'm afraid of something else. Again a whisper, a frightened look, and mysteriousness. But of what? Of what? Flogging, he uttered, and gave me a helpless look. Who is going to flog you? Where? Why? I cried out, afraid he was losing his mind. Where? Why, there, where it's done. And where is it done? Cher, he whispered almost into my ear. The floor suddenly opens under you, and you're lowered in up to the middle. Everybody knows that. Fables, I cried, once I understood. Old fables. And can it be that you've believed them all along? I burst out laughing. Fables, but they must have started somewhere, these fables. A flogged man doesn't talk. I've pictured it 10,000 times in my imagination. But you, why you? If you haven't done anything. So much the worse. They'll see I haven't done anything, and they'll flog me. And you're convinced you'll be taken to Petersburg for that? My friend, I've already said I do not regret anything. My career is finished. From that hour in Skvoreshniki when she said farewell to me, I've had no regret from my life, but the disgrace. The disgrace. What will she say if she finds out? He glanced at me despairingly, poor man, and blushed all over. I, too, looked down. She'll find out nothing because nothing's going to happen to you. It's as if I were talking to you for the first time in my life, Stepan Trofimovich. You've surprised me so much this morning. But, my friend, this is not fear. Let them even pardon me. Let them even bring me back here and do nothing. It's here that I am lost. She will not suspect me all her life. Me, the poet, the thinker, the man she worshipped for 22 years. It won't even occur to her. It will, he whispered with profound conviction. She and I talked of it several times in Petersburg during the Great Lent, before we left, when we were both afraid. It's improbable. And then women. And how undeceive her. It will come out as improbable. And who in this paltry town will believe it? She'll be glad. She'll be very upset, very genuinely, like a true friend, but secretly, she'll be glad. I'll have given her a weapon against me for my whole life. Oh, my life is lost. 20 years of such complete happiness with her. And now